there's like all these different things, it wasn't like one thing. Typically with a remote viewing session, you start going and something pulls you in and you're going to describe that. And there's kind of a main theme to this session, But this one was like, wow, there's like 5 different things and they're all very different. And then there's this one here. And there's a rocket launcher, and it's launching all these rockets over, and they're falling, and they're, a war starting here or something like that. And we do the debrief, we get the feedback. The tasking was to look at a specific date, February 22nd, 2022, 2022022.
Welcome. I'm here with Edward Riordan. Edward, welcome. It's been too long, my friend.
Hey, man. Thanks so much for inviting me back on your great show. It's good to be back.
Yeah, poor Edward had to listen to me show a bunch of like bird videos and things like that before. So thank you for suffering through that craziness.
No, it's fascinating, man. It's always interesting for me to see people going through their own experience of this kind of stuff and how it translates to them and who they are. It's kind of like what I've been exploring with remote viewing is that there's a lot of different brain types and there's a few different styles of remote viewing. So if you want to find a style of remote viewing that might work for you, you have to understand what brain type you have. So that kind of fits in with what you were just showing me. It's like everybody's going to experience this kind of quote unquote magical world in a way that's going to reflect who they are. And it's fascinating. Everybody's unique, it's cool.
Now I didn't intend to talk about this at all, but you just raised a tantalizing topic. We got to talk a little bit about brain types. Like I haven't heard this concept before. Is that something that you can quickly delve into?
Yeah. Well, I've been remote viewing for 26 years. I've been exploring remote viewing for the past 14 years. And exploring meaning exploring the process of remote viewing. How might remote viewing work? And that kicked off for me in an experience that I had. I was just working a regular target. And I was videotaping it because I've been videotaping my sessions and putting them on YouTube since 2011. And I was doing that and working this target. And when I was done and I got my feedback, the location was a British intelligence building. It looks like a donut-shaped building in the UK somewhere. That was what it was. But in my session, I had all the elements of the building, but none of them were piecing together. It was like a strange puzzle. I didn't know how to piece together. And when I looked at that, I remembered in one of Ingo Swann's books, he calls that lack of fusion, where you have the elements of it, but you don't know how they piece together. The viewer is like, I don't know how these piece together. And he calls it lack of fusion, which I think is a brilliant, perfect term for it. And when I saw that, I was so happy that I caught it on video, because I caught an enigma on video. Something I read in a book, now I captured it on video and I can put it up and other people can see it. So I was fascinated that I caught this lightning in a bottle event of lack of fusion. So that started my obsession with the process of remote viewing. How did that happen? So the brain type thing came when I wanted to explore the parts of my brain that might be stimulated when an actual remote viewing is taking place. So that was what I wanted to do. So then I had to come up with, well, how the hell am I going to do that? It's not a matter of I'm going to task myself, remote view the parts of my brain. And no. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is I set up a series of experiments, hundreds of sessions. I'm not talking I did 3 and now I can talk about it like I know what I'm talking about. I did hundreds of them. And to blind targets, I work a blind target on my whiteboard right here. And when I'm feeling the qualities of remote viewing is taking place, oh yeah, this is I can feel it. That's when I would then turn my attention. Where in my brain do I feel the stimulus is taking place? Because we don't feel our brain unless we have a headache. There's not like, feely nerves in there. So I had to sense, where in my brain is this taking place? And I found certain areas that I would then, it's right here. It's right here. It's right here, here. Then I would go
like CA3 and all that.
That's where I found all. Yeah. Then I'd go and research that part and what is going on in there. Oh my God, that's exactly what's taking place. So I was doing that, and I was in parts of the hippocampal formation and that kind of stuff. And I found this experience that humans have called proprioception. We have proprioceptor nerves in our bodies that send signals to our brain that give us a sense of where we are dimensionally. It's like if you were walking through a room when it was dark, you could feel your way around. It's like, oh, I think that's a table, because you can feel it, and your proprioceptor nerves are going to send that information to your brain. I said, that's it. That is it. So it was in the exploration of that and learning about that I found a brain type. I call it a brain type called aphantasia. And I'd never heard of that term before, aphantasia. And I was, what the hell does that even mean? And what it means is someone who doesn't think visually. They don't have, there's a spectrum of it, but on the far spectrum, people who don't have visual images, they don't think in pictures at all. And I was just like, wow. And then you have a spectrum. Some people, they may think in kind of blurry pictures, or maybe a blurry image with some color in it or something like that. And then maybe they think in more clear. And on the opposite end of that is what's called hyperphantasia, where people who have very extreme, vivid photographic memory or imagery in their mind, where they can just close their eyes, see a whole environment and explore it, complete visual, full memorization of it. That's hyperphantasia. So I started thinking about that and how that could apply to remote viewing. Because in remote viewing, you really have two main systems of remote viewing. You have controlled remote viewing, Ingo Swann style, and a bunch of variations of that, but they're all variations of CRV. And on the other end, you have HRVG, Hawaiian Remote Viewers Guild, which is Dick Allgaier uses, and like on our team, Naeem, he's a HRVG guy. Glenn Wheaton, Glenn Wheaton students, and they are visual oriented. So when they go into their sessions, they are actually closing their eyes and they want a visual. I put that, and so I started thinking about that. Like, you know what? I think HRVG is kind of a hyperphantasia-esque style of remote viewing. CRV doesn't want you to go into the visual realm. They say stay away from the visual realm because it's going to get your mind thinking, and then you're just going to be making stuff up. So I started looking at CRV and more of the aphantasia spectrum for people, HRVG for more of the hyperphantasia type people, and then people can kind of figure their way out where they are in that spectrum. So I posted a video about that years ago about aphantasia in my finding and exploration of that. And I started getting all these comments of people saying, thank you so much for putting this video up. I have aphantasia and I'm really interested in remote viewing. And I thought I would never be able to explore that because I don't think in visual terms. And I was like, wow, that is just mind-blowing. And so I categorized those two in the certain brain types of CRVS, more on the aphantasia side, HRVG, a little more on the hyperphantasia visual side. And then I started to look at the system that my own personalized system, where the focus is more on what I call dimensional sensations, where the individual is experiencing things dimensionally. So it's not conceptual, feely, emotional like aphantasia-esque CRV. It's not just give me the visual and I'm going to describe the visual like HRVG is a little more akin to. It's more of I'm experiencing dimensionally, and that's my experience. And that is what I found through my experiments. And there are brain types of that have neurological terms to them. They are haptic perception, stereognosis. These are experiences that some people can have. I'm not saying it's special. I'm just saying that the brain can process information this way, process it dimensionally. That's been the focus of mine. So two primary, and I'm adding in a third. Doesn't mean it's the last of them. That only means we're at, in my opinion, or at least in my research, we're at about three now. Who knows what the spectrum is going to be of what else we can do? How else do we perceive things? Because people process information differently. Every brain is going to process information differently. And in remote viewing protocols are back engineered, the back engineering of typically one person's experience. Ingo Swann, CRV. What is CRV? How Ingo Swann perceived things. Some people are going to be able to do that well because of the type of brain they have. HRVG follows the protocol developed by Richard Ireland, which is visual. Eyes closed, you're getting a visual. You get a blackboard there, you're going on the visual. Back engineered and how he did his things. And that's going to work for people who have that kind of brain type. So you have to look at it in terms of, well, how does my brain work? How do I process information? And then you can look at the options of remote viewing styles that might fit the way your brain works. It's a completely novel way of looking at it now. And in my opinion, it's kind of my contribution to remote viewing is to explore these things because no one's ever talked about it before like that. And so for me,
at least in public settings.
And maybe even in private too, I'd be surprised. But as a humble servant,
you don't think the CIA or like Kit Green, those guys have like looked at done it through brain scans and things like that, or
they probably have. Are they looking at it in these terms?
Probably not. Yeah.
So what's important to me is to have a person who is not of the military, who's not of any agenda, an explorer of these realms, exploring, finding things, and putting them out there for everyone to see. I'm not charging anything for it. Just look at my YouTube channel. I got over 500 videos for free. So that's what I would like about. That's why I look at it in terms of I'm just a humble servant, and I want to provide some perspectives and information that may help somebody, may not help a lot of people, but it may help a few. And the comments that I get regarding it, are really moving to me, like I didn't think I could do it. Thank you for addressing this. I've never heard of that before. So that's what I mean by brain types. And I think that's where it's kind of going now, where remote viewing can kind of look in, because like you're saying, there has always been this, well, what is your specialty? And we can kind of gear you towards that. Well, I'm really good at remote viewing and describing people. Okay, well then we'll let you focus on. Well, I'm good at remote viewing technology. Okay, well then we'll let you focus on that. There's been that kind of focus. But as far as how a person's brain operates, maybe, but not in the public sector that I know of.
All right. Sorry for the diversion, but I thought it was worthwhile to go.
Oh, it's my favorite topic, dude. That's my favorite. That's my life's work right there. So yeah, we can go on and on about that.
Okay. There's been a lot of chaos in the world. How much of it did you predict, or what are some examples of this chaos? And at the top, let's say it's June 28th, 2025 that we're recording this. We just got past the crazy 12-day war, which I think it's historically people are going to laugh at that like mission accomplished, but we'll kind of get back to that. I think if there's one thing that I could predict without remote viewing or anything like that, is that within the next 10 years, Iran will have a nuclear weapon. That is a certainty. That is an absolute certainty.
Yeah.
So, unless they don't have smart people and they don't learn any lessons. But I'll make that prediction right now and we'll see what happens. But of the current craziness, what are some of the things that you saw before they happened? And we all know about COVID, right? You definitely had game of function, which was
Right.
pretty damn close. And you're like, what the hell's this? I don't.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting one. The COVID thing came up several times prior to its event, and so that was a
And we
big.
should probably be very careful talking about it because
Yeah, the videos are all up there. So if they were going to come and get me, I had videos up about it since November of 2017. But why, in my opinion, is because it was such a big spike on the timeline. That's why. But for us, like in Future Forecasting Group, formerly known as crypto viewing, the way we do it, we do several things at Future Forecasting. We do monthly events. So we're semi front loaded going into that every month. So we're semi front loaded. We know we're looking at events in the coming month. Extremely difficult to do because of all the news noise.
Mhm.
And then we work blind targets. And it's in that realm that I give the most credence to because we're blind. We don't know what the hell the target is. I'll give you an example. We worked a target it was in, I think, like October, November of 2021. And so what, we did, here's the ID, work this thing. So I'm working it and I'm going through it. And it had this feel like, as I'm going through this session, like there's like all these different things, it wasn't like one thing. Typically with a remote viewing session, you start going and something pulls you in and you're going to describe that. And there's kind of a main theme to this session, but this one was like, wow, there's like 5 different things and they're all very different. And then there's this one here, and there's a rocket launcher, and it's launching all these rockets over, and they're falling, and they're, a war starting here or something like that. And we do the debrief, we get the feedback. The tasking was to look at a specific date, February 22nd, 2022. 2022022.
The beginning of the Ukraine war.
That's right. That's right. And to go 2 days prior and 2 days after to see if any events were going to take place, because there were some theories that 2022, that's going to be the start of, they wanted to see if there was an event going on,
Just because of the numbers.
Just because of the numbers. Yeah. So then I'm like, I don't know, man, but here's a missile launcher thing, and they're launching missiles, and there they are, they're blowing up. And so we get to that date, and yeah, the Russia and Ukraine thing started right there. So I was like, okay, all right, that's kind of wild, But the point is that they're done under blind conditions, so we don't know what the hell it is. I don't know it's going to be, February of 2022. For all I know, they're asking me who built the pyramids. You know what I mean? It could cover that spectrum very easily, and it does all the time. So Naeem had the assassination attempt of Trump a month before it happened. Drew the thing with the people and the guy on stage, and this thing. I mean, it was great. Yeah, he did.
Creepy.
He did an amazing job. What else did we have? Oh God! Once I started to try to think of them, I started drawing blanks, man. What do we got here? Like I say, when we go into our monthly event stuff, I want to try to find something bizarre. I want to find weird things, not just
like labor strikes in Missoula, Montana.
Yeah, something like that. It's like, but we do have to try to fit within a time frame. So if we're looking for, June or something like that, we're doing them at the end of May, and we want to try to stick with what's going on in June. But here, I'll give you an example of one here that I thought was pretty in my line of what I prefer. Okay. This is an example here. So I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm just looking for stuff to happen in June. And I see this guy's climbing up a building. He's like, reminds me of a Spider-Man story. June 26th, French Spider-Man. There he is climbing the building. Some kind of a publicity stunt there. How the hell do I know that's going to happen? It's like bizarre stuff.
That happened. You literally just predicted that about a month ago.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a June one. And that just happened 2 days ago, and I did that at the end of May, So what does it mean? Is it a world changing? Oh, I got to know, where the bombs are going to drop. No, it's just some bizarre frickin' thing like a Montana strike, like a strike in Montana.
Oddly specific.
Right? Oddly specific. I like those. I really like those, Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the COVID thing or the start of the Russian thing. I prefer them when they happen long before those things are in the collective consciousness of things to look out for or things to be afraid of, like the bombing thing in the Ukraine. It wasn't even something that was on my radar, or a virus, and the COVID thing wasn't on the radar for that at the time. Those things weren't in a main storyline. And so that's what gives it validity to me. And what it signals in my mind is that there's a part of us, a part of humanity that is connected on the timeline, and we will be drawn to certain spikes in the timeline. That something's spiking over here, and I'm going to become aware of it. And especially at a time when that thing is not something that you're normally aware of, Like right now, if I say bombs are dropping, it's like, dude, they're dropping all over the fucking place, Come on, guy, But if it was a couple of years ago when there weren't bombs dropping, it's like, something's going to kick off here. Different story. But I will say, though, this for June, Daz Smith did have a big war kickoff for June that he did in May. So when the Iran situation began and the magnitude of that, I was like, yeah, dude, you got that one. There are just certain ones that you got to say, yeah, you got that one. Even though we're in a situation, that was a major one. And I can't say that for this month. And I couldn't have said it for the month of May. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was good. That was a thumbs up. That was a thumbs up there. But it's difficult to do, man. It's just a difficult thing to do in a sea of noise, And especially now, we talk about this often, how much harder it is to do these than it was, let's say, in 2019 or 2018. Because the noise factor was so much less than it is now. Because we have, wars going on now. We have artificial intelligence is online. Everybody can go and have access to it now, which brings in a whole completely new dimension to the human consciousness experience, which adds an additional layer of difficulty to what we do. So I'm kind of looking at, it's forcing me to look at remote viewing differently. And in terms of something akin to Cliff High's WebBot thing. Cliff High's WebBot is a scrub the internet and say, in 8 years from now, someone's going to be talking about this or whatever. They'll be standing on a corner talking about this, drinking a, Pepsi or whatever. Starting to look at it more along those lines. And so what we're doing now with Future Forecasting Group is we're starting to take our debriefs and running them into an AI to categorize everything that we say, which is brilliant because you can't just put the paper sessions in, because...
And then correlating the most commonly repeated items, something like that.
Yeah. Just first of all, in order for my misspellings and you'd need a quantum computer to figure out my misspellings and my chicken scratch. But you take everything that we say in the debrief, because we go through all of our sessions. And I say every word in my session I go through. Same with the other guys. We go through it all. Plus, we're giving our feelings as we're talking about it too. There's an additional stuff going in. And then we can put all of that into an AI and then create kind of like this 4-dimensional frame of potential. And so I was talking to Dick Allgaier about it months ago. I said, dude, we've probably described the next 15 years and we don't know it because it's all lost in there in our sessions, for the past 8 years. We do a project every single week, dude, every single week since the beginning of 2018. That's an enormous amount of remote viewing data. And the majority of it, when we go through it, we don't understand it,
Interesting you say this. You'll appreciate this. So David Morehouse, he did a remote viewing project or multiple remote viewing projects for Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. But he did it with 70 of his students. And he did it manually. Oof. Right, where he would do like some mapping exercises where it was a blind map and they had to put points where on the map there was certain resonances and things like that. And it was like a 3-dimensional map too. But again, they couldn't see what they were mapping. They just had to feel it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you mentioned this AI thing because he had so much data that he was talking to Travis Taylor. And Travis Taylor's like, well, why don't you just put it into AI and have it? And, Morehouse is like 70 years old. He's just like, who's going to upload this stuff, right? Like, I got to scan all of it. Like, I got to, I had it scanned. Yeah. And it was still a little too early for the public sector. Yeah. But the fact that somebody with classified access was saying, oh, just put it in the AI tells me they've already been doing it for a little bit.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And it's interesting because now we can look at that data. We can put it into parameters now. I mean, once we get it all categorized, let the AI take all that audio and everything that we say and categorize it. Then we can put parameters in there. Take all of this information and describe how it's going to manifest as a world view in 5 years. And see what it comes up with by running all that through some kind of an algorithm like that. See what kind of picture it draws based on the things that we've said. That to me is just absolutely fascinating. Just unbelievable. And it's something we've wanted for a long time, because we've talked about it for years, that we have so much work over the years that we can't remember it, man. And if we can't remember it, it's basically lost in time unless you go back and do the research and dig this stuff up. It's just, it's a book in a huge library. And so it's an exciting time to be in remote viewing because we can now try to get a better understanding of our work. Because when you go through a debrief, you're looking for what I call obvious result. You have obvious result bias. Did I draw an image that looks like that? Did I mention the word that is the thing? If I didn't, then I don't understand my stuff and I was off, or I don't understand my stuff. I just don't understand it. I don't know enough about the topic to say, oh, I know what that means. That means that means that, and get a full understanding of it. Yeah,
and it's a lot
of our stuff, dude, it's just it's kind of like the COVID thing. If I didn't go back and look at those sessions from September of 2019 or August of 2019, I would have never found that that COVID stuff that came up, which was like, yeah, I'm sorry guys, I missed this one. You know what I mean? But the tasking was, what will be the catalyst to switch over to the new digital financial system? What will be the catalyst for that? That's what the tasking was. And so they go back and look at it and say, oh man, we got to start looking at this. We have to adjust our brain to look at our remote viewing results in a different way.
By the way, you stumbled into my next question, either accidentally or on purpose, because we're talking about leveraging the power of AI, right? To not accelerate, but magnify the power of remote viewing across multiple people. Now, the government hasn't exactly been forthright about remote viewing. The CIA just said, oh, no usable intelligence was generated from it. But Jessica Utz said, no, it's statistically significant. It works, etc.
Yeah.
But at a time when there's this push for, you will all live in the 15-minute cities, you will eat the bugs, and you will be very happy. All right. While there's this push for total control on one hand, there's also this awakening that's happening with people discovering that they're more than just the physical, that there are things that they may be able to do that have been muted or silenced their entire lives. And I think it's coming at it might almost be too late, but these are the only ways that we're going to be able to fight against this coming totalitarian system, because there's no other word to describe it, right? Like measuring every single transaction that you have and saying, oh, you've had too much meat. I don't think you're going to have any more meat. You can't have any more meat. I know it's your money, but you're not going to be able to buy meat. You're flagged, right? So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to encourage people to develop these abilities, because that's the only way people are going to be able to communicate without the panopticon observing and dictating and controlling. But I don't know. What do you think? It seems
I think you're right about that. And the reason that I say I think you're right about that is because I watched a video of a woman in Britain, George Orwell's 1984 Britain, who was standing across the street from, I think it was an
And by the way,
abortion.
you mean literally, like that's what it is right now.
It is now, yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, in my opinion as well. Britain has fallen.
A woman standing across the street from, I think it was an abortion clinic, and just wasn't doing anything, didn't have a sign, nothing,
Just said
wasn't
a
holding.
prayer, right?
She was thinking a prayer inside of her own mind, and they arrested her. And I'm thinking, what? They arrested her. The police officer said, are you praying? She said, only in my own mind. Said, okay, turn around. You're under arrest.
That's literally a thought crime from
That
1984.
is George Orwell's thought crime. And that really creeped me. I got chills right now just thinking about it. I get chills thinking about that. Some of the stuff I see going on over there is, they got some weird stuff going on.
Well, how about Ireland?
It makes me glad to be here,
How about our native homeland?
I'm always, come on, guys, don't let them do it, man. They're standing up. They're standing up. And
the problem is there's like over 100,000 of like people from outsiders, and there's only a 5 million person population on Ireland.
My opinion on it is, and again, I can only share my opinion, how I feel about it as an Irish American person. I'm glad the Irish started standing up faster than maybe some of the other guys, but once
the Israelis are talking about sending Palestinians there now.
Why?
Don't get me started.
I mean, it's like, the Irish have gotten screwed for a long time by the British, man. Yeah. They've been getting screwed for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's like, you got a small little island. Why are you going to send them over there, man? Why don't you take those? Oh boy, I'm going to get on my soapbox, probably get in trouble. Why don't you take those people and why don't you put them all in Buckingham Palace?
Mm-hmm.
King Charles loves him. He should live with him. Put them all in there. There's plenty of room. But again, I don't want to get on that soapbox. So, I don't want to, you know, I'll start sharing my opinions, and that's not always a good thing to do. But I just don't like the idea of the people don't want it, and the government is basically forcing the people into a bad situation. That's a terrible thing, in my opinion.
I need to preface this with, I do not condone this. I do not support it. But we're starting to see kind of the natural place where this was going to go. So there have been two political assassinations thus far, right? You've had the Mangione thing, Luigi Mangione, right? You could call that, with the CEO of United Healthcare.
Yeah.
And then you also had this attack on Minnesota lawmakers. I'm not sure why. It seemed like they were pretty moderate people, but I think you're going to see more of that, where people are finally realizing it's really not about right or left. It's about divide and conquer. And you have people at the top who, like in the last election, like, I'm not going to get too much into it, but I voted for a candidate not because I liked him. I've just clearly indicated who it was. But because the other side, I could see a timeline unfolding where white people were put in camps in 5 years. I'm not saying that's what would happen, but the rhetoric was just so over the top, and there was data to support it, right? So the S&P 500, white people make up 60% of the population, but in 2021, every new job that the S&P 500 companies created, only 5% went to white people. Like, that is organized discrimination. I'm not saying like this is something to be, I'm not a victim. I don't think we should feel sorry for ourselves, but that is rankly illegal, but it still happened. And you just push that forward. So anyway, they're playing these games where you're seeing it with the black community versus like Hispanics, right? In the sense with immigration and things like that, right? Democrats are trying to get kind of the black community to empathize. They're like, hell no, they're taking our jobs.
They're getting our resources are going to them. Yeah. They're upset about it. Yeah. Rightly so. But
there's this divide and conquer sort of thing. And I think people are waking up to this. No, that's not the case. And there are more controversial examples of this that I lightly touched on, but I'm not going to elaborate. We can talk about that in private. But the mask is starting to come off. And I think the more that they try to push this panopticon sort of society, the more you're going to see some of these things that we do not encourage, but are the natural consequence of people forcing the vast majority of humanity to live under rules that they themselves don't follow. I mean, look at the Bezos wedding. Have you seen that?
No, I didn't see it.
Like, a bunch of jets flying to, spending $100 million on a wedding, all these people that have been lecturing us about fuel usage and this and that.
Yeah. Greta Turkey Sandwich Thunderberg or whatever her name is. Yeah.
You've stolen my childhood.
Yeah. And given me a career as a professional, grifter.
Monger, right?
The Mangione thing, we had that in our predictions too. Daz had that one. I think it was either Daz or Naeem. They drew the picture of a guy pointing a gun at the back of a guy's head, like there's going to be an assassination. All I see is this gun come out, and it's going to go shoot this guy right as he's walking away. And we're like, oh man. People ask us like, how do you, remote view those things and not get emotionally attached to them or emotionally affected? And all of us have the same feelings. Like when you're in a session like that, you're just not using the part of your brain that is dealing with emotional stuff. You're just trying to grab something and write it down. There's no emotion. The emotion comes later, either when you're talking about it or when it happens, is when the emotions kick in. Like there have been times in our debriefs where it's happened to me, it's happened to Dick Allgaier, where I'll be going through a session and it's a long, beefy, in-depth experience I had, and I'm going through it and I'll get to a certain point and I just have to turn my camera off and weep for about 2 minutes and then come back, get myself together and come back. That's when I'm emotionally reacting to it. During the session, no way. You're it's like you're an alien. You've gone to a different planet and you don't know what's going on. You don't have any opinions. You don't have any sides. You're just going, okay, that guy does this. And you don't know what's going on. You're not emotionally attached in any way until later. Then you are emotionally attached. It's a very strange thing. It's a very strange thing. But anyway, a little tangent on that.
Did you have any, or did any of the team pick up anything on that whole drone flap at the end of last year?
We had the drone thing. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. You know what we did have? Daz drew it perfectly of a helicopter or flying into an airplane. When that thing happened? Yeah. He had that perfectly. I think we did have something on the drone thing. I'm pretty sure we did the month before it started happening. I was asked to work a target for someone, and it was based off of another. I can't get too much into it because it wasn't a public thing, but it was a few months before the drone thing, and maybe 6 or 8 months before the drone thing. And I was asked to look at a certain location for a certain thing that was going on that came up in a previous session. And I had they're drones, they're coming out of China, it's the Chinese, and they got
I know
this
the location now.
thing.
You should. I know the location.
And I was like, I don't know what it means. I don't have any reference for this until that thing went down. And they started going, wait a minute, are these friggin' Chinese, And I was like, wait a minute, let me go back and look at that. Ah, man, was that, maybe that's what that might have been. It comes in.
Yeah, speaking of which, the Iranian effectiveness of their ballistic missiles has probably given the Chinese more certainty over the impact it might have on Taiwan. I just kind of thought about that now. That's actually pretty scary.
Oh, actually, I got one here. Let me show you this one. This came up in one of the here. I forget what month. This was from May. We were looking at June events. I'm like, I don't know, man. I see a B-52 bomber, Europe to China, something like that, active duty. June 20th, B-52 bomber arrives in Indonesia for the first time. I was like, all right, I don't know jack about B-52 bombers, but hey, man, it's when it came in. I had to put it down. And there it was. Yeah.
What how's it doing in Indonesia?
Who knows, man? I don't know. That's the thing about a lot of this stuff with remote viewing. It's like you'll get something and you're trying to just kind of like that B-52 thing. You get the main gestalt. Okay, it's like a B-52 bomber. It's going to China area, whatever. You get the main gestalt of it. And you may go further into it and try to understand why is this taking place, or you may not, And then when it happens, you're like, I don't know what the story is. Well, I saw the B-52 bomber going over an area. I don't know what the story is. But there are times where we will go through something and get a much deeper story. Like as an example, we were given a task it It was like August, September of 2023. And we got like 5 viewers working it, 5, 6 viewers are working this thing. We're blind. We have no idea what it is. None of the viewers get anything related to the actual tasking. We're all describing something else. Really not common. It was a first for us because when you got 4, 5, 6 viewers, even if the viewers are having a bad day, 2 of them are at least going to get onto the thing, At least no one got onto it. Everyone got onto something else. So instead of them saying, scrap it, let's start over, we continued on. Go describe more, describe more, describe more. So we ended up with this huge body of work. We go to do the debrief, and this was in September of 2023. And we're describing an attack. We have it in there. It's an attack. And I see this thing's flying off, and it's an attack. And there's people over here, and they're watching the thing. And there's these other guys over here, and I had to draw it in there. It's this big concrete thing. You drive in there, and it's like a nuke facility in there. Blah 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 blah. And then over here, there's an attack, and they're watching it and all this kind of stuff. And the other guys had bombs dropping, and all this stuff's going on. And so we go through the debrief, and we're dumbfounded. We don't know what to think of it because we find out that none of us hit the tasking, but we're all describing a similar thing, and that's what's important. So we're like, yeah, but we missed it, and we don't know what any of this means. A month later, the October 7th, 2023 Palestinian-Israel situation happens. And then we go back and we look at the attack and this, the drawings, and we're like, I think this makes sense now. Again, a big spike on the timeline. So the tasking, in my opinion, the tasking that we were asked to look at wasn't important, as we have a very narrow time frame to describe this big spike here. So the viewers are all at some level agree to that, and we describe that thing. Then we're waiting for Israel to respond to that October 7th situation. And they do respond. Prior to that response, I do Wim Hof breathing meditations every day for 30 minutes a day, 30 big inhale, exhales, and then exhale, hold everything out for 2 minutes, and then inhale and hold for 15 seconds, and then do another cycle. I do that every day. And for about a month prior to that, every time I would go and do that breathing meditation, while I'm laying there doing it, and I'm listening, I got him doing the audio guiding me, so my mind is free to. And every time I would be going through that, my mind would go back to the mid-1980s, and I'd be living my life in the mid-1980s. And in the mid-1980s, I had a precognitive dream experience one night that all completely altered and changed the course of my life, 100%. And in that experience, I was sleeping, and then I went completely black, but I became lucid. Like, oh, I'm in this blackness. And then a second later, I'm on this street, and the buildings are all blown out and rubbled, and there's bricks in the road, and it's just complete destruction everywhere. And there's trees, and they're all, blown out and everything. And I was there for a few seconds, and then I'm back to sleep. I wake up the next morning, and I didn't remember it for the first few minutes after I woke up, and I remembered it. And as soon as I remembered it, this huge download of information came into my mind that the world, that thing, the world is going to change. All jobs are going to change. The finances are going to change. Everything is going to be different. Everything that I'm being taught to set up for the future is going to be completely 100% different in my future. And I was 16 years old in the mid 80s, when it was like, Reagan and waving a flag and get a jet, horn o' plenty. And it completely changed the course of my life. So when Israel responded back to the Palestinian thing, and I saw the images of those areas of Gaza, or whatever, that gotten blown out, it was the exact same thing that I had seen in that vision from the mid 80s. That's it. That's it. I said,
I hate to say this, but that's almost a relief because I think you originally thought it was like here.
Well, here's the thing, is that prior to seeing that, like I say, when I did my breathing meditations, I was constantly going back to the 80s, to that point in the 80s and living that. And then when I saw that feedback, that stopped happening the day after that. It didn't happen anymore. So I started to really look at that in terms of, wait a minute. And back then I was thinking I was seeing the future, but now I'm thinking I was sending myself information from the future to myself in the past. And the reaction to that was so physical that I developed a giant welt on the back of my neck. I couldn't even turn my head. I was in this full blown physical reaction to that specific scenario. And once I recovered from that was when I had that sense of relief, like you're saying. Like, okay, I know where I am in time now. I didn't know where that was in time. Now I know where I'm at in time. And now like it's going to, that cycle has completed. And now we're in a whole new cycle. And the concern about what we describe in those sessions, we ended up calling them our luminosity event sessions. It was something illuminated that we were describing, was that event was going to be the start of something, will be the catalyst for a chain of events. So when Israel started launching bombs at Iran again a month ago or whatever, and then Trump says we're going to get involved and drop some bombs too, I was very concerned about that because in my luminosity sessions, I had the underground nuclear facility. I didn't see it getting, it wasn't getting bombed out, but on the computer screen of the guy in there was a big freaking mushroom cloud. You know what I mean? Further in their detectors and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh man, what the hell's going to happen now? Because
I think that's the best time to end that. What the hell's going to happen now? Because I think the next episode is we're going to discuss that. Any final words before we start or before we end?
I don't have any fear of the future, man. I look forward to it and whatever's going to happen. And we can discuss that more in the next episode.
All right. Thank you, my friend. As always, an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And
I'd appreciate that you have it and you can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's two options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much, and keep watching. I really appreciate it.